The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Adi Parva. Section 170, Chakraratha Parva continued. Vasampayana said, hearing these words of the Brahmana, the sons of Kunti seemed to be, as it were, pierced with darts. Indeed, all those mighty heroes lost their peace of mind. Then the truthful Kunti, beholding all her sons listless and inattentive, addressed Yudhishthira and said, we have now lived many nights in the abode of this Brahmana. We have passed our time pleasantly in this town, living on the alms obtained from many honest and illustrious persons. O oppressor of foes, as we have now seen often and often all the agreeable woods and gardens that are in this part of the country, seeing them again would no longer give any pleasure. O heroic scion of Kuru's race, alms also are not now obtainable here as easily as before. If thou wishest, it would be well for us now to go to Panchala. We have not seen that country. It will, no doubt, O hero, prove delightful to us. O crusher of foes, it hath been heard by us that alms are obtainable in the country of the Panchala, and that Yajnasena, the king thereof, is devoted to Brahmanas. I am of opinion that it is not well to live long in one place. Therefore, O son, if thou likest, it is well for us to go there. Hearing these words, Yudhishthira said, it is our duty to obey thy command, which, besides, must be for our good. I do not, however, know whether my younger brothers are willing to go. Thus ends the 170th section in the Chakraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 171, Chakraratha Parva continued. Vasampayana continued, then Kunti spoke unto Bhimsena and Arjuna and the twins regarding the journey to Panchala. They all said, so be it. Then, O king, Kunti with her sons saluted the Brahmana, in whose house they had dwelt, and set out for the delightful town of the illustrious Drupda. Vasampayana said, while the illustrious Pandavas were living disguised in the abode of the Brahmana, Vyasa the son of Satyavati once went to see them. Those chastisers of foes, beholding him coming, rose up and stepped onward to receive him. Saluting him reverentially and worshipping him also, the Pandavas stood in silence with joined hands. Thus worshipped by them, the sage became gratified. He asked them to be seated, and cheerfully addressing them said, Ye slayers of foes, are ye living in the path of virtue and according to the scriptures? Do ye worship the Brahmanas? Ye are not, I hope, backward in paying homage unto those that deserve your homage. The illustrious Rishi, after this, spoke many words of virtuous import, and after discoursing upon many topics of great interest, he addressed them, an illustrious Rishi, living in a certain hermitage, had a daughter of tender waist, fair lips, and fine eyebrows, and possessing every accomplishment. As a consequence of her own acts, in a past life, the fair maid became very unfortunate. Though chaste and beautiful, the damsel obtained not a husband. With a sorrowful heart she thereupon began to practice ascetic penances with the object of obtaining a husband. She soon gratified by her severe asceticism the god Sankara, Mahadev, who became propitious unto her, and said unto that illustrious damsel, Ask thou the boon thou desirest. Blessed be thou. I am Sankara, prepared to give thee what thou wilt ask, desirous of benefiting herself, The maid repeatedly said unto the Supreme Lord, O I've me, a husband endued with every accomplishment. The great ascetic then left them and went to the place whence he came. The great ascetic then left them and went to the place whence he came. Thus ends the 171st section in the Chakraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 172, Chakraratha Parva continued. Vasampayana said, after Vyasa had gone away, those bulls among men, the Pandavas, saluted the Brahmana and bade him farewell, and proceeded towards Panchala, with joyous hearts and with their mother walking before them. Those slayers of all foes, in order to reach their destination, proceeded in a due northerly direction, walking day and night till they reached a sacred shrine of Shiva with the crescent mark on his brow. Then those tigers among men, the sons of Pandu, arrived at the banks of the Ganges. Dhananjaya, that mighty car warrior, walking before them, touch in hand, for showing the way and guarding them against wild animals. And it so happened that at that time the proud king of the Gandharvas, with his wives, was sporting in that solitary region in the delightful waters of the Ganges. The king of the Gandharv heard the tread of the Pandavas as they approached the river. On hearing the sounds of their footsteps, the mighty Gandharvas was inflamed with wrath, and beholding those chastiser of foes, the Pandavas, approached towards him with their mother, he drew his frightful bow to a circle and said, It is known that excepting the first 40 seconds the great twilight preceding nightfall hath been appointed for the wandering of the Yakshas, the Gandharvas and the Rakshasas, all of whom are capable of going everywhere at will. The rest of the time hath been appointed for man to do his work. If therefore, men, wandering during those moments from greed of gain, come near us, both we and the Rakshasas slay those fools. Therefore, persons acquainted with the Vedas never applaud those men, not even kings at the head of their troops, who approach any pools of water at such a time. Stay ye at a distance, and approach me not. Know ye not that I am bathing in the waters of the Bhagirathi? Know that I am Angaparna the Gandharv, ever relying on my own strength. I am proud and haughty and am the friend of Kuvara. This my forest on the banks of the Ganges, where I sport to gratify all my senses, is called Angaparna after my own name. Here neither gods, nor Kapalikas, nor Gandharvas nor Yakshas, can come. How dare ye approach me who am the brightest jewel on the diadem of Kuvara? Hearing these words of the Gandharv, Arjuna said, Blockhead, whether it be day, night, or twilight, who can bar others from the ocean, the sides of the Himalayas, and this river? O ranger of the skies, whether the stomach be empty or full, whether it is night or day, there is no special time for anybody to come to the Ganga, that foremost of all rivers. As regards ourselves endued with might, we care not when we disturb thee. Wicked being, those who are weak in fighting worship you. This Ganga, issuing out of the golden peaks of Himamvat, falleth into the waters of the ocean, being distributed into 7 streams. They who drink the waters of these 7 streams, viz. Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, Vithasht, Sarayu, Gomti, and Gandaki, are cleansed of all their sins. O Gandharv, this sacred Ganga again, flowing through the celestial region, is called there the Alkananda. It hath again in the region of the Pitris become the Vatarni, difficult of being crossed by sinners, and Krishna-Dwaipayana himself hath said so. The auspicious and celestial river, capable of leading to heaven, them that touch its waters, is free from all dangers. Why dost thou then desire to bar us from it? This act of thine is not in consonant with eternal virtue. Disregarding thy words, why shall we not touch the sacred waters of the Bhagirathi free from all dangers and from which none can bar us? Vasampayana continued, hearing these words of Arjuna, Angapurna became inflamed with wrath and drawing his bow to a circle began to shoot his arrows like venomous snakes at the Pandavas. Then Dhananjaya, the son of Pandu, wielding a good shield and the torch he held in his hand, warded off all those arrows, and addressing the Gandharva again said, O Gandhadeva, seek not to terrify those that are skilled in weapons, for weapons hurled at them vanish like froth. I think, O Gandharva, that ye are superior, in prowess, to men, therefore shall I fight with thee, using celestial weapons and not with any crooked means. This fiery weapon, that I shall hurl at thee, Vrihaspati the reverend preceptor of Indra, gave unto Bharadwaja, from whom it was obtained by Agni-Vesrya, and from Agni-Vesrya by my preceptor, that foremost of Brahmanas, Drona, who gave it away to me. Vasampayana continued, saying these words, the Pandav wrathfully hurled at the Gandharva that blazing weapon made of fire which burned the Gandharva's chariot in a trice. Deprived of consciousness by the force of that weapon, the mighty Gandharva was falling, head downward, from his chariot. Dhananjaya seized him by the hair of his head adorned with garlands of flowers and thus dragged the unconscious Gandharva towards his brothers. Beholding this, that Gandharva's wife Kumbansi, desirous of saving her husband, ran towards Yudhishthira and sought his protection. The Gandharva said, O exalted one, extend to me thy protection. O, set my husband free. O Lord, I am Kumbansi by name, the wife of this Gandharva who seeketh thy protection. Beholding her, so afflicted, the mighty Yudhishthira addressed Arjuna and said, O slayer of foes, O child, who would slay a foe who hath been vanquished in fight, who hath been deprived of fame, who is protected by a woman, and who hath no prowess? Arjuna replied, saying, Take thou thy life, O Gandharva, I go hence, and grieve not. Yudhishthira, the king of the Kurus commandeth me to show thee mercy. The Gandharva replied, 1. Have been vanquished by thee, I shall, therefore, abandon my former name Angapurna, the blazing vehicle, as I have been vanquished by thee, I shall, therefore, abandon my former name. In name alone, O friend, I should not be boastful when my pride in my strength hath been overcome. I have been fortunate in that I have obtained thee, O Arjuna, that wielder of celestial weapons. I like to impart to thee the power of producing illusions which Gandharvas alone have. My excellent and variegated chariot hath been burnt by means of thy fiery weapon. I who had formerly been called after my excellent chariot should now be called after my burned chariot. The science of producing illusions that I have spoken of was formerly obtained by me by ascetic penances. That science I will today impart to the giver of my life, thy illustrious self. What good luck doth he not deserve who, after overcoming a foe by his might, giveth him life when that foe asketh for it. This science is called Chakshuhi. It was communicated by Manu unto Soma and by Soma unto Viswavasu, and lastly by Viswavasu unto me. Communicated by my preceptor, that science, having come unto me who am without energy, is gradually becoming fruitless. I have spoken to thee about its origin and transmission. Listen now to its power. One may see, by its aid, whatever one wisheth to see, and whatever way he liketh, generally or particularly. One can acquire this science only after standing on one leg for 6 months. I shall, however, communicate to thee this science without thyself being obliged to observe any rigid vow. O king, it is for this knowledge that we are superior to men, and capable as we are seeing everything by spiritual sight. It is for this that we are equal to the gods. O best of men, I intend to give thee and each of thy brothers 100 steeds born in the country of the Gandharvas, of celestial color and endued with the speed of the mind. Those horses are employed in bearing the celestials and the Gandharvas. They may be lean-fleshed, but they tire not, nor doth their speed suffer on that account. In days of yore the thunderbolt was created for the chief of the celestials in order that he might slay the Asura, Vitra, with it. But hurled at Vitra's head it broke into 1,000 pieces. The celestials worship with reverence those fragments of the thunderbolt. That which is known in the 3 worlds as glory is but a portion of the thunderbolt. The hand of the Brahmana with which he poureth libations on the sacrificial fire, the chariot upon which the Kshatriya fighteth, the charity of the Vaisya, and the service of the Sudra rendereth unto the 3 other classes, are all fragments of the thunderbolt. It hath been said that horses, forming as they do a portion of the Kshatriya's chariot, are, on that account, unslayable. Again, horses which from a portion of the Kshatriya's chariot, are the offspring of Vadva. Those amongst them that are born in the region of the Gandharvas can go everywhere and assume any hue and speed at the will of their owners. These horses of mine that I give thee will always gratify thy wishes. On hearing these words of the Gandharvas, Arjuna said, O Gandharv, if from satisfaction for having obtained thy life at my hands in a situation of danger, thou givest me thy science, and these horses, I would not accept thy gift. The Gandharv replied, saying, a meeting with an illustrious person is ever a source of gratification, besides thou hast given me my life. Gratified with thee, I will give thee my science. That the obligation, however, may not all be on one side, I will take from thee, O Vibhatsu, O bull in Bharata's race, thy excellent and eternal weapon of fire. Arjuna said, I would accept thy horses in exchange for my weapon. Let our friendship last forever. O friend, tell us for what we human beings have to stand in fear of the Gandharvas, chastisers of foes, that we are virtuous and conversant with the Vedas. Tell us, O Gandharv, why in travelling in the night time we have been censured by thee. The Gandharv said, Ye are without wives, though ye have completed the period of study. Ye are without a particular asrama, mode of life. Lastly, ye are out without a Brahmana walking before. Therefore, ye sons of Pandu, ye have been censured by me. The Rakshasas, Gandharvas, Pisachas, Urgas and Danvas, are possessed of wisdom and intelligence, and acquainted with the history of the Kuru race. O hero, I, too, have heard from Narada and other celestial rishis about the good deeds of your wise ancestors. I myself, too, while roaming over the whole earth bounded by her belt of seas, have witnessed the prowess of thy great race. O Arjuna, I have personal knowledge of thy preceptor, the illustrious son of Bharadwaja, celebrated throughout the 3 worlds for his knowledge of the Vedas and the science of arms. O tiger in Kuru's race, O son of Nta, I also know Dharma, Vayu, Sakra, the twin Aswins, and Pandu, these 6 perpetuators of Kuru race, these excellent celestials and human progenitors of you all. I also know that you 6 VE brothers are learned and high-souled, that ye are foremost of all wielders of weapons, that ye are brave and virtuous and observant of vows. Knowing that your understanding and hearts are excellent and your behavior faultless, I have yet censured you. For, O thou of Kuru's race, it behoveth no man endued with might of arms to bear with patience any ill usage in the sight of his wife, I especially as, O son of Kunti, our might increaseth during the hours of darkness, accompanied by my wife I was filled with wrath. O best of vow-observing men, I have, however, been vanquished by thee in battle. Listen to me as I tell thee the reasons that have led to my discomfiture. The brahmacharya is a very superior mode of life, and as thou art in that mode now, it is for this, O Parth, that I have been defeated by thee in battle. O chastiser of foes, if any married kshatriya fight with us at night, he can never escape with life. But, O Parth, a married kshatriya, who is sanctified with Brahma, and who hath assigned the cares of his state to a priest, might vanquish all wonders in the night. O child of Tapti, men should therefore ever employ learned priests possessing self-command for the acquisition of every good luck they desire. That Brahmana is worthy of being the king's priest who is learned in the Vedas and the 6 branches thereof, who is pure and truthful, who is of virtuous soul and possessed of self-command. The monarch becomes ever victorious and finally earneth heaven who hath for his priests a Brahmana conversant with the rules of morality, who is a master of words, and who is pure and of good behavior. The king should always select an accomplished priest in order to acquire what he hath not and protect what he hath. He who desireth his own prosperity should ever be guided by his priest, for he may then obtain even the whole earth surrounded by her belt of seas. O son of Tapti, a king, who is without a Brahmana, can never acquire any land by his bravery of glory of birth alone. Know, therefore, O perpetuator of Kuril's race, that the kingdom lasteth forever in which Brahmanas have power. Thus ends the 172nd section in the Chaitraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 173, Chaitraratha Parva continued. Arjuna said, Thou hast addressed me, more than once, as Tapatya. I therefore wish to know what the precise significance of this word is, O virtuous Gandharv. Being sons of Kunti, we are, indeed, Kaunteyas. But who is Tapti that we should be called Tapatyas? Vasampayana continued, thus addressed, the Gandharv related to Dhananjaya the son of Kunti the following story well known in the 3 worlds. The Gandharv said, O son of Pritha, O foremost of all intelligent men, I will duly recite to you in full this charming narration. O, listen with attention to what I say in explanation of why I have addressed thee as Tapatya. I, that one in heaven who pervadeth by his light the whole firmament, had a daughter named Tapti equal unto himself. Tapti, the daughter of the god Vivaswat, was the younger sister of Savitri, and she was celebrated throughout the 3 worlds and devoted to ascetic penances. There was no woman amongst the celestials, the Asuras, the Yakshas, the Rakshasas, the Apsaras, and the Gandharvas, who was equal to her in beauty. Of perfect, symmetrical and faultless features, of black and large eyes, and in beautiful attire, the girl was chaste and exceedingly well conducted. And, O Bharata, seeing her Savitri, the sun, thought that there was none in the 3 worlds who, for his beauty, accomplishments, behavior, and learning, deserved to be her husband. Beholding her attain the age of puberty and, therefore, worthy of being bestowed on a husband. Her father knew no peace of mind, always thinking of the person he should select. At that time, O son of Kunti, Raksha's son, that bull amongst the Kurus, the mighty king Samvarna, was duly worshipping Surya with offerings of arghya and flower garlands and scents, and with vows and fasts and ascetic penances of various kinds. Indeed, Samvarna was worshipping Surya confessedly in all his glory, with devotion and humility and piety, and beholding Samvarna conversant with all rules of virtue and unequaled on earth for beauty, Surya regarded him as the fit husband for his daughter Tapti. And, O thou of Kuru's race, Vivaswat then resolved to bestow his daughter on that best of kings, viz. Samvarna, the scion of a race of world-wide fame. As Surya himself in the heavens filled the firmament with his splendor, so did King Samvarna on earth fill every region with the splendor of his good achievements. And utterers of Brahma worship Surya confessedly in all his glory, so did all men, O Parth, except Brahmanas, worship Samvarna. Blessed with good luck, King Samvarna excelled Soma in soothing the hearts of friends and Surya in scorching the hearts of foes. And, O Kaurava, Tapna, Surya himself was resolved upon bestowing his daughter Tapti upon King Samvarna, who was possessed of such virtues and accomplishments. Once on a time, O Parth, King Samvarna, endued with beauty of person and immeasurable prowess, went on a hunting expedition to the underwoods on the mountain breast. While wandering in quest of deer, the excellent steed the king rode, overcome, O Parth, with hunger, thirst and fatigue, died on the mountains. Abandoning the steed, the king, O Arjuna, began to wander about upon the mountain breast on foot, and in course of his wandering the monarch saw a maiden of large eyes and unrivaled beauty. That grinder of hostile hosts, that tiger among kings himself without a companion, beholding there that maiden without a companion, stood motionless gazing at her steadfastly. For her beauty, the monarch for some moment believed her to be the goddess, Shri herself. Next he regarded her to be the embodiment of the rays emanating from Surya. In splendor of her person she resembled a flame of fire, though in benignity and loveliness she resembled a spotless digit of the moon. And standing on the mountain breast, the black-eyed maiden appeared like a bright statue of gold. The mountain itself with its creepers and plants, because of the beauty and attire of that damsel, seemed to be converted into gold. The sight of that maiden inspired the monarch with a contempt for all women that he had seen before. By beholding her, the king regarded his eyesight truly blessed. Nothing the king had seen from the day of his birth could equal, he thought, the beauty of that girl. The king's heart and eyes were captivated by that damsel, as if they were bound with a cord, and he remained rooted to that spot, deprived of his senses. The monarch thought that the artificer of so much beauty had created it only after churning the whole world of gods, asuras and human beings. Entertaining these various thoughts, King Samvarna regarded that maiden as unrivaled in the three worlds for wealth of beauty. And the monarch of pure descent, beholding the beautiful maiden, was pierced with kamas, cupids, shafts, and lost his peace of mind. Burnt with the strong flame of desire, the king asked that charming maiden, still innocent, though in her full youth, saying, O thou of tapering things, who art thou and whose? Why also dost thou stay here? O thou of sweet smiles, why dost thou wander alone in these solitary woods? Of every feature perfectly faultless, and decked with every ornaments, thou seemest to be the coveted ornament of these ornaments themselves. Thou seemest not to be of celestial or asura or yaksh or rakshasa or naga or gandharv or human origin. O excellent lady, the best of women that I have ever seen or heard of would not compare with thee in beauty. O thou of handsome face, at sight of thee lovelier than the moon and graced with eyes like lotus petals, the god of desire is grinding me. King Samvarna thus addressed that damsel in the forest, who however, spoke not a word unto the monarch burning with desire. Instead, like lightning in the clouds, that large-eyed maiden quickly disappeared in the very sight of the wishful monarch. The king then wandered through the whole forest, like one out of his senses, in search of that girl of eyes like lotus petals. Failing to find her, that best of monarchs indulged in copious lamentations, and for a time stood motionless with grief. Thus ends the 173rd section in the Chaitraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 174, Chaitraratha Parva continued. The Gandharv continued, when that maiden disappeared, that feller of hostile ranks deprived of his senses by kama, concupiscence, himself fell down, on the earth. And as the monarch fell down, that maiden of sweet smiles and prominent and round hips appeared again before him, and smiling sweetly, said unto that perpetuator of Kuru's race these honeyed words, Rise, rise, O chastiser of foes! Blessed be thou, it behoveth thee not, O tiger among kings, to lose thy reason, celebrated as thou art in the world. Addressed in these honeyed words, the king opened his eyes and saw before him that self-same girl of swelling hips. The monarch who was burning with the flame of desire then addressed that black-eyed damsel in accents weak with emotion, and said, Blessed be thou, O excellent woman of black eyes! As I am burning with desire and paying thee court, O, accept me! My life is ebbing away. O thou of large eyes, for thy sake it is, O thou of the splendor of the filaments of the lotus, that Kama is incessantly piercing me with his keen shafts without stopping for a moment. O amiable and cheerful girl, I have been bitten by Kama who is even like a venomous viper. O thou of swelling and large hips, have mercy on me. O thou of handsome and faultless features, O thou of face like unto the lotus petal or the moon, O thou of voice sweet as that AF singing Kinra, my life now depends on thee. I without thee, O timid one, I am unable to live. O thou of eyes like lotus petals, Kama is piercing me incessantly. O large-eyed girl, be merciful unto me. It becometh thee not, O black-eyed maid, to cast me off. O handsome girl, it behoveth thee to relieve me from such affliction by giving me thy love. At first sight thou hast attracted my heart. My mind wandereth. Beholding thee I like not to cast my eyes on any other woman. Be merciful. I am thy obedient slave, thy adorer. O, accept me. O beautiful lady, O large-eyed girl, at the sight of thee, the god of desire hath entered my heart, and is piercing me with his shafts. O thou of lotus eyes, the flame of desire burneth within me. O, extinguish that flame with the water of thy love poured on it. O beautiful lady, by becoming mine, pacify thou the irrepressible god of desire that hath appeared here armed with his deadly bow and arrows, and that is piercing me incessantly with those keen shafts of his. O thou of the fairest complexion, wenstre me according to the Gandharv form, for, O thou of tapering hips, of all forms of marriage the Gandharv's hath been said to be the best. I, the Gandharv continued, hearing those words of the monarch. Tapti answered, O king, I am not the mistress of my own self. Know that I am a maiden under the control of my father. If thou really entertaineth an affection for me, demand me of my father. Thou sayest, O king, that thy heart hath been robbed by me. But thou also hast, at first sight, robbed me of my heart. I am not the mistress of my body. Therefore, O best of kings, I do not approach thee. Women are never independent. What girl is there in the three worlds that would not desire thee for her husband, as thou art kind unto all thy dependents, and as thou art born in a pure race? Therefore, when the opportunity comes, ask my father Aditya for my hand with worship, ascetic penances, and vows. If my father bestowed me upon thee, then, O king, I shall ever be thy obedient wife. My name is Tapti, and I am the younger sister of Savitri, and the daughter, O bull amongst Kshatriyas of Savitri, son, the illuminator of the universe. Thus ends the 174th section in the Chaitraratha Parva of the Adiparva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adiparva. Section 175, Chakraratha Parva continued. The Gandharv continued, saying this, Tapti of faultless features ascended the skies. The monarch thereupon again fell down on the earth. His ministers and followers searching for him throughout the forest at length came upon him lying on that solitary spot, and beholding that excellent king, that mighty bowman, thus lying forsaken on the ground like a rainbow dropped from the firmament, his minister-in-chief became like one burnt by a flame of fire. Advancing hastily with affection and respect, the minister raised that best of monarchs lying prostrate on the ground and deprived of his senses by desire. Old in wisdom as in age, old in achievements as in policy, the minister, after having raised the prostrate monarch, became easy in mind. Addressing the king in sweet words that were also for his good, he said, Blessed be thou, O sinless one, I fear not, O tiger among kings. The minister thought that the monarch, that great feller of hostile ranks in battle, had been lying on the ground overcome with hunger, thirst, and fatigue. The old man then sprinkled over the crownless head of the monarch water that was cold and rendered fragrant with lotus petals. Slowly regaining his consciousness, the mighty monarch sent away all his attendants with the exception of his minister only. After those attendants had retired at his command, the king sat upon the mountain breast, having purified himself duly. The king sat upon that chief of mountains, and began, with joined hands and upturned face, to worship Surya. King Samvarna, that smiter of all foes, thought also of his chief priest Vasistha, that best of rishis. The king continued to sit there day and night without intermission. The Brahmana sage Vasistha came there on the 12th day. That great rishis of soul under perfect command knew at once by his ascetic power that the monarch had lost his senses in consequence of tapti. And that virtuous and best of munis, as soon as he knew this, desirous of benefiting the monarch who was ever observant of vows, addressed him and gave him every assurance. The illustrious rishis, in the very sight of that monarch, ascended upward to interview Surya, himself possessed of the splendor of that luminary. The Brahmana then approached with joined hands the god of 1,000 rays and introduced himself cheerfully unto him, saying, I am Vasistha. Then Vivaswat of great energy said unto that best of is, Welcome art thou, O great Rishi. Tell me what is in thy mind. O thou of great good fortune, whatever thou demandest of me, O foremost of eloquent men, I will confer on thee. however difficult it may be for me. Thus addressed by Surya, the rishi of great ascetic merit, bowing unto the god of light, replied, saying, O Vibhavasu, this thy daughter Tapti, the younger sister of Savitri, I ask of thee for Samvarna. That monarch is of mighty achievements, conversant with virtue, and of high soul. O firmament ranger, Samvarna will make a worthy husband for thy daughter. Thus addressed by the Rishi Vibhakra, resolved upon bestowing his daughter upon Nana, saluted the Rishi, and replied unto him, saying, O Samvarna is the best of monarchs, thou art the best of rishis, Tapti is the best of women. What should we do therefore but bestow her on Samvarna? Saying this, the god Tapna made over his daughter Tapti of every feature perfectly faultless unto the illustrious Vasistha to bestow her upon Samvarna. And the great Rishi then accepted the girl Tapti and taking leave of Surya, came back to the spot, where that bull amongst the Kurus, of celestial achievements, was. King Samvarna, possessed by Kama and with his heart fixed on Tapti, beholding that celestial maiden of sweet smiles led by Vasistha, became exceedingly glad. And Tapti of fair eyebrows came down from the firmament like lightning from the clouds, dazzling the 10 points of the heavens. And the illustrious Rishi Vasistha of pure soul approached the monarch after the latter's 12 nights' vow was over. It was thus that King Samvarna obtained a wife after having worshipped with ascetic penances the propitious Lord Vivaswat, by the help of Vasistha's ascetic power. And Samvarna, that bull among men with due rites, took Tapti's hand on that mountain breast which was resorted to by the celestials and the Gandharvas. The royal sage, with the permission of Vasistha, desired to sport with his wife on that mountain. And the king caused Vasistha to be proclaimed his regent in his capital and kingdom, in the woods and gardens. And bidding farewell unto the monarch, Vasistha left him and went away. Samvarna, who sported on that mountain like a celestial, sported with his wife in the woods and the underwoods on that mountain for 12 full years. And, O best of the Bharatas, the god of 1,000 eyes poured no rain for 12 years on the capital and on the kingdom of that monarch. Then, O chastiser of enemies, when that season of drought broken out, the people of that kingdom, as also the trees and lower animals, began to die fast. And during the continuance of that dreadful drought, not even a drop of dew fell from the skies and no corn grew. And the inhabitants in despair, and afflicted with the fear of hunger, left their homes and fled away in all directions. And the famished people of the capital and the country began to abandon their wives and children and grew reckless of one another. The people being afflicted with hunger, without a morsel of food, and reduced to skeletons, the capital looked very much like the city of the king of the dead, full of only ghostly beings. On beholding the capital reduced to such a state, the illustrious and virtuous and best of Bishis, Vasistha was resolved upon applying remedy and brought back unto the city that tiger among kings, Samvarna along with his wife, after the latter had passed so long a period in solitude and seclusion. After the king had entered his capital, things became as before, for, when that tiger among kings came back to his own, the god of 1,000 eyes, the slayer of asuras, poured rain in abundance and caused corn to grow. Revivified by the foremost of virtuous soul, the capital and the country became animated with extreme joy. The monarch, with his wife Tapti, once more performed sacrifices for 12 years, like the Lord Indra, god of rain, performing sacrifices with his wife Sachi. The Gandharv continued, "This, O Parth, is the history of Tapti of old, the daughter of Vivaswat. It is for her that thou art called Tapatya, King Samvarna begot upon Tapat a son named Kuru, who was the foremost of ascetics born in the race of Kuru. Thou art, O Arjuna, to be called Tapatya. Thus ends the 175th section in the Chaitraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 176, Chaitraratha Parva continued. Vasampayana said, that Bulje among the Bharatas, Arjuna, hearing these words of the Gandharv, was inspired with feelings of devotion and stood confessedly like the full moon. And that mighty bowman, that foremost one in Kuru's race, having his curiosity greatly excited by what he heard of Vasistha's ascetic power, asked thee, O Andavat, saying, I desire to hear of the Rishi whom thou hast mentioned as Vasistha. O, tell me in full about him. O chief of the Gandharvas, tell me who this illustrious Rim was that was the priest of our forefathers. The Gandharv replied, Vasistha is Brahma's spiritual, lit mind-born son and Arundhati's husband. Ever difficult of being conquered by the very immortals, desire and wrath, conquered by Vasistha's ascetic penances, used to shampoo his feet. Though his wrath was excited by Viswamitra's offense, that high-souled rishi did not yet exterminate Kusikas, the tribe whose king Viswamitra was. Afflicted at the loss of his sons, he did not, as though powerless, though really otherwise, do any dreadful act destructive of Viswamitra. Like the ocean transgressing not its continents, Vasistha transgressed not the laws of Yam by bringing back his children from the domains of the king of the dead. It was by obtaining that illustrious one who had conquered his own self that Ikshaku and other great monarchs acquired the whole earth. And O prince of Kuru's race, it was by obtaining Vasistha, that best of rishis as their priest, that those monarchs performed many grand sacrifices. And O best of the Pandavas, that regenerate rishi assisted these monarchs in the performance of their sacrifices like Vrihaspati assisting the immortals. Therefore, look ye for some accomplished and desirable Brahmana conversant with the Vedas and in whose heart virtue prevails, to appoint as your priest. A Kshatriya of good lineage, desirous of extending his dominions by conquering the earth, should, O Parth, first appoint a priest. He who is desirous of conquering the earth should have a Brahmana before him. Therefore, O Arjuna, let some accomplished and learned Brahmana, who has his senses under complete control and who is conversant with religion, profit and pleasure, be your priest. Thus ends the 176th section in the Chaitraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 177, Chaitraratha Parva continued. Vasampayana continued, hearing this, Arjuna said, O Gandharv, whence arose the hostility between Viswamitra and Vasistha, both of whom dwelt in a celestial hermitage? O, tell us all about it. The Gandharv replied, O Parth, the story of Vasistha is regarded as a Purana, legend, in all the three worlds. Listen to me as I recite it fully. There was, in Kanyakubja, O bull of Bharata's race, a great king of worldwide fame named Gadi, the son of Kusika. The virtuous Gadi had a son named Viswamitra, that grinder of foes, possessing a large army and many animals and vehicles. And Viswamitra, accompanied by his ministers, used to roam in quest of deer through the deep woods and over picturesque marshes, killing deer and wild boars. Once on a time, while out in quest of deer, the king became weak with exertion and thirst. The monarch arrived in that state at the asylum of Vasistha, and the blessed and illustrious Rishi beholding him arrive, reverenced with his homage that best of men, King Viswamitra. And, O Bharata, the Rishi saluted the monarch by offering him water to wash his face and feet with, and arghya, and wild fruits, and clarified butter. For the illustrious Rishi had a cow yielding anything that was desired of her. When she was addressed, saying, O give, she always yielded the article that was sought, and she yielded various fruits and corn wild or grown in gardens and fields, and milky and many excellent nutritive wines full of 6 different kinds of juice, taste, and like unto nectar itself, and various other kinds of enjoyable things, O Arjuna, of ambrosial taste for drinking and eating, and for lapping and sucking, and also many precious gems and robes of various kinds. With these desirable objects in profusion the monarch was worshipped. And the king with his minister and troops became highly pleased. And the monarch wondered much, beholding that cow with 6 elevated limbs and the beautiful flanks and hips, and 5 limbs that were broad, and eyes prominent like those of the frog and beautiful in size, and high udders, and faultless make, and straight and uplifted ears, and handsome horns, and well-developed head and neck. And, O Prince, the son of Gadi, gratified with everything and applauding the cow named Nandini, addressed the Rishi, saying, O Brahmana, O great Muni, give me thy Nandini in exchange for 10,000 kin, or my kingdom. Enjoy thou my kingdom, giving me thy cow. Hearing these words of Viswamitra, Vasistha said, O sinless one, this cow hath been kept by me for the sake of the gods, guests, and the Pitris, as also for my sacrifices. I cannot give Nandini in exchange for even thy kingdom. Viswamitra replied, I am a Kshatriya, but thou art a Brahmana devoted to asceticism and study. Is there any energy in Brahmanas who are peaceful and who have their souls under perfect command? When thou givest me not what I desire in exchange even for 10,000 cows, I will not abandon the practice of my order, I will take thy cow even by force. Vasistha said, Thou art a Kshatriya endued with might of arms. Thou art a powerful monarch. O, do in haste what thou desirest, and stop not to consider its propriety. The Gandharv continued, thus addressed by Vasistha, Viswamitra, O Parth, then forcibly seized Nandini, that cow, white, like the swan or the moon, and attempted to take her away, afflicting her with stripes and persecuting her otherwise. The innocent Nandini then began, O Parth, to low piteously, and approaching the illustrious Vasistha stood before him with uplifted face. Though persecuted very cruelly, she refused to leave the Rishi's asylum. Beholding her in that plight, Vasistha said, O amiable one, thou art lowing repeatedly and lamb hearing thy cries. But, O Indini, even Viswamitra is taking thee away by force. What can I do in this matter, as I am a forgiving Brahmana? The Gandharv continued, then, O bull in Bharata's race, Nandini, alarmed at the sight of Viswamitra's troops and terrified by Viswamitra himself, approached the Rishi still closer, and said, O illustrious one, why art thou so indifferent to my poor self afflicted with the stripes of the cruel troops of Viswamitra and crying so piteously as if I were masterless? Hearing these words of the crying and persecuted Nandini, the great Rishi lost not his patience nor turned from his vow of forgiveness. He replied, the Kshatriya's might lies in physical strength, the Brahmanas in forgiveness. Because I cannot give up forgiveness, go thou, O Nandini, if thou choosest. Nandini answered, Castest thou me away, O illustrious one, that thou C.I.E. so? If thou dost not cast me off, I cannot, O Brahmana, be taken away by force. Vasistha said, O blessed one, I do not cast thee off. Stay, if thou canst. Oh, yonder is thy calf, tied with a stout cord, and even now being weakened by it. The Gandharv continued, then the cow of Vasistha, hearing the word stay, raised her head and neck upward, and became terrible to behold. With eyes red with rage and lowing repeatedly, she then attacked Viswamitra's troops on all sides. Afflicted with their stripes, and running hither and thither with those red eyes of hers, her wrath increased. Blazing with rage, she soon became terrible to behold like unto the sun in his midday glory. And from her tail she began to rain showers of burning coals all around. And some moments after, from her tail she brought forth an army of Palhavas, and from her udders, an army of Dravidas and Saiks, and from her womb, an army of Yavnas, and from her dung, an army of Savras, and from her urine, an army of Kachis, and from her sides, an army of Savras. And from the froth of her mouth came out hosts of Poundras and Kiretas, Yavnas and Singalas, and the barbarous tribes of Kasa and Chivukas and Pulindas and Chins and Huns with Kailas, and numerous other Mlahachas. And that vast army of Mlechas in various uniforms, and armed with various weapons, as soon as it sprang into life, deploying in the very sight of Viswamitra, attacked that monarch's soldiers. And so numerous was that Mlecha host that each particular soldier of Viswamitra was attacked by a band of 5 or 7 of their enemies. Assailed with a mighty shower of weapons, Viswamitra's troops broke and fled, panic-stricken, in all directions, before his very eyes. But, O bull in Bharata's race, the troops of Vasistha, though excited with wrath, took not the life of any of Viswamitra's troops. Nandini simply caused the monarch's army to be routed and driven off. And driven, from the asylum, 27 full miles, panic-stricken, they shrieked aloud and behold not anyone that could protect them. Viswamitra, beholding this wonderful feat that resulted from Brahmana prowess, became disgusted with Kshatriya prowess and said, Oh, fie on Kshatriya prowess! Brahmana prowess is true prowess. In judging of strength and weakness, I see that asceticism is true strength. Saying this, the monarch, abandoning his large domains and regal splendor and turning his back upon all pleasures, set his mind on asceticism. Crowned with success in asceticism and ruling the 3 worlds with the heat of his ascetic penances, he afflicted all creatures and finally became a Brahmana. The son of Kusika at last drank Soma with Indra himself, in heaven. Thus ends the 177th section in the Chaitraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 178, Chaitraratha Parva continued. The Gandharv continued, There was, O Parth, a king in this world, named Kalmanshpada, who was the race of Ikshaku and was unequalled on earth for prowess. One day the king went from his capital into the woods for purposes of hunting, and this grinder of foes pierced, with his arrows, many deer and wild boars. And in those deep woods the king also slew many rhinoceroses. Engaged in sport for some length of time, the monarch became very much fatigued and at last he gave up the chase, desiring to rest a while. The great Viswamitra, endued with energy, had, a little while ago, desired to make that monarch his disciple. As the monarch, afflicted with hunger and thirst, was proceeding through the woods, he came across that best of rishis, the illustrious son of Vasistha, coming along the same path. The king, ever victorious in battle, saw that Muni bearing the name of Sakri, that illustrious propagator of Vasistha's race, the eldest of the high-souled Vasistha's 100 sons, coming along from opposite direction. The king, beholding him, said, "Stand out of our way." The rishi, addressing the monarch in a conciliatory manner, said unto him sweetly, "O king, this is my way. This is the eternal rule of morality indicated in every treatise on duty and religion, viz., that a king should ever make way for Brahmanas." Thus did they address each other respecting their right of way. stand aside, were the words they said unto each other. The Kwi, who was in the right, did not yield, nor did the king yield to him from pride and anger. That best of monarchs, enraged at the rishis, refusing to yield him the way, acted like a Rakshasa, striking him with his whip. Thus whipped by the monarch, that best of rishis, the son of Vasistha, was deprived of his senses by anger, and speedily cursed that first of monarchs, saying, "O worst of kings, since thou persecutest like a Rakshasa an ascetic, thou shalt from this day become a Rakshasa subsisting on human flesh. Hence, thou worst of kings, thou shalt wander over the earth, affecting human flesh." This did the Rishi Sakri, endued with great prowess, speak unto King Kalmanshpada. At this time Viswamitra, between whom and Vasistha there was a dispute about the discipleship of Kalmanshpada, approached the place where that monarch and Vasistha's son were. And, O Parth, that Rishi of severe ascetic penances, viz., Viswamitra of great energy, approached the pair, knowing by his spiritual insight that they had been thus quarreling with each other. After the curse had been pronounced, that best of monarchs knew that Rishi to be Vasistha's son and equal unto Vasistha himself in energy. And, O Bharata, Viswamitra, desirous of benefiting himself, remained on that spot, concealed from the sight of both by making himself invisible. Then that best of monarchs, thus cursed by Sakri, desiring to propitiate the Rishi, began to humbly beseech him. And, O chief of the Kurus, Viswamitra, ascertaining the disposition of the king, and fearing that the difference might be made up, ordered a Rakshasa to enter the body of the king. And a Rakshasa of the name of Kinkara then entered the monarch's body in obedience to Saktin's curse and Viswamitra's command. And knowing, O chastiser of foes, that the Rakshasa had possessed himself of the monarch, that best of Rishi, Viswamitra, then left the spot and went away. Shortly after, O Parth, the monarch, possessed by the Rakshasa and terribly afflicted by him, lost all his senses. At this time a Brahmana beheld the king in the woods. Afflicted with hunger, that Brahmana begged of the king some food with meat. The royal sage, Kalmanshpada, that cherisher of friends, answered the Brahmana, "C.I.E, stay thou here, O Brahmana, for a moment. On my return, I will give thee whatever food thou desirest." Having said this, the monarch went away, but the Brahmana stayed on there. The high-minded king, having roved for some time at pleasure and according to his will, at last entered his inner apartment. Thus waking at midnight and remembering his promise, he summoned his cook and told him of his promise unto the Brahmana staying in the forest. And he commanded him, saying, "Hie thee to that forest. A Brahmana waiteth for me in hope of food. Go and entertain him with food with meat." The Gandharv continued, thus commanded, the cook went out in search of meat. Distressed at not having found any, he informed the king of his failure. The monarch, however, possessed as he was by the Rakshasa, repeatedly said, without scruple of any kind, "Feed him with human meat." The cook, saying, "So be it," went to the place where the king's executioners were, and thence taking human flesh and washing and cooking it duly and covering it with boiled rice offered it unto that hungry Brahmana devoted to ascetic penances. But that best of Brahmanas, seeing with his spiritual sight that the food was unholy and, therefore, unworthy of being eaten, said these words with eyes red with anger, "Because that worst of kings of eat me food that is unholy and unworthy of being taken, therefore that wretch shall have himself a fondness for such food. And becoming fond of human flesh as cursed by Sakri of old, the wretch shall wander over the earth, alarming and otherwise troubling all creatures, i.e. the curse." Therefore, on that king, thus repeated a second time, became very strong, and the king, possessed by a Rakshasa disposition, soon lost all his senses. A little while after, O Bharata, that best of monarchs, deprived of all his senses by the Rakshasa within him, beholding Sakri who had cursed him, said, "Because thou hast pronounced on me this extraordinary curse, therefore, I shall begin my life of cannibalism by devouring thee." Having said this, the king immediately slew Sakri and ate him up, like a tiger eating animal it was fond of. Beholding Sakri thus slain and devoured, Viswamitra repeatedly urged that Rakshasa, who was within the monarch, against the other sons of Vasistha. Like a wrathful lion devouring small animals, that Rakshasa soon devoured the other sons of the illustrious Vasistha that were junior to Sakri in age. But Vasistha, learning that all his sons had been caused to be slain by Viswamitra, patiently bore his grief like the great mountain that bears the earth. That best of Munis, that foremost of intelligent men, was resolved rather to sacrifice his own life than exterminate, in anger, the race of Kusikas. The illustrious Rishi threw himself down from the summit of Meru, but he descended on the stony ground as though on a heap of cotton. And, O son of Pandu, when the illustrious one found that death did not result from that fall, he kindled a huge fire in the forest and entered it with alacrity. But that fire, though burning brightly, consumed him not. O slayer of foes, that blazing fire seemed to him cool. Then the great Muni, under the influence of grief, beholding the sea, tied a weight to his neck and threw himself into its waters. But the waves soon cast him ashore. At last, when that Brahmana of rigid vows succeeded not in killing himself by any means, he returned, indeed, of heart, to his asylum. Thus ends the 178th section in the Klaitrarata Parva of the Adiparva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adiparva. Section 179, Chakraratha Parva continued. The Gandharv continued, beholding his asylum bereft of his children, the Muni afflicted with great grief left it again. And in course of his wandering he saw, O Parth, a river swollen with the waters of the rainy season, sweeping away numberless trees and plants that grew on its margin. Beholding this, O thou of Kuru's race, the distraught Muni, thinking that he would certainly be drowned if he fell into the waters of that river, he tied himself strongly with several cords and flung himself, under the influence of grief, into the current of that mighty stream. But, O slayer of foes, that stream soon cut those cords and cast the Rishi ashore. And the Rishi rose from the bank, freed from the cords with which he had tied himself. And because his cords were thus broken off by the violence of the current, the rishi called the stream by the name of Vipasa, the cord breaker. For his grief the Muni could not, from that time, stay in one place. He began to wander over mountains and along rivers and lakes. And beholding once again a river named Hamvati, flowing from Himamvata, of terrible aspect and full of fierce crocodiles and other aquatic monsters, the rishi threw himself into it, but the river, mistaking the Brahmana for a mass of unquenchable fire, immediately flew in 100 different directions, and hath been known ever since by the name of the Satadra, the river of 100 course. Seeing himself on the dry land even there, he exclaimed, "Oh, I cannot die by my own hands." I saying this, the rishi once more bent his steps towards his asylum, crossing numberless mountains and countries. As he was about to re-enter his asylum, he was followed by his daughter-in-law named Adrasyanti. As she neared him, he heard the sound from behind of a very intelligent recitation of the Vedas with the 6 graces of elocution. Hearing that sound, the rishi asked, "Who is it that followed me?" His daughter-in-law then answered, "I am Adrasyanti, the wife of Sakri. I am helpless, though devoted to asceticism." Hearing her, Vasistha said, "O daughter, whose is this voice that I heard, repeating the Vedas along with the Angas, like unto the voice of Sakri reciting the Vedas with the Angas?" Adrasyanti answered, "I bear in my womb a child by thy son Sakri. He hath been here full 12 years. The voice thou hearest is that of the Muni, who is reciting the Vedas." The Gandharv continued, thus addressed by her, the illustrious Vasistha became exceedingly glad, and saying, "0, there is a child of my race." He refrained, "O Parth, from self-destruction." The sinless one, accompanied by his daughter-in-law, then returned to his asylum. And the rishi saw one day in the solitary woods, the Rakshasa, Kalmanshpada. The king, O Bharata, possessed by fierce Rakshasa, as he saw the rishi, became filled with wrath and rose up, desiring to devour him. And Adrasyanti, beholding before her that Rakshasa of cruel deeds, addressed Vasistha in these words, full of anxiety and fear: "O illustrious one, the cruel Rakshasa, like unto death himself, armed with his fierce club, cometh towards us with a wooden club in hand. There is none else on earth except thee, O illustrious one, and, O foremost of all that are conversant with the Vedas, to restrain him today. Protect me, O illustrious one, from this cruel wretch of terrible mien. Surely, the Rakshasa cometh hither to devour us." Vasistha, hearing this, said, "Fear not, O daughter, there is no need of any fear from any Rakshasa. This one is no Rakshasa from whom thou apprehendest such imminent danger. This is King Kalmanshpada, endued with great energy and celebrated on earth. That terrible man dwelleth in these woods." The Gandharv continued, beholding him advancing, the illustrious Rishi Vasistha, endued with great energy, restrained him, O Bharata, by uttering the sound hum. Sprinkling him again with water sanctified with incantations, the rishi freed the monarch from that terrible curse. For 12 years the monarch had been overwhelmed by the energy of Vasistha's son, like Surya seized by the planet Rahu during the season of an eclipse. Freed from the Rakshasa, the monarch illumined that large forest by his splendor, like the sun illumining the evening clouds. Recovering his power of reason, the king saluted that best of rishis with joined hands and said, "O illustrious one, I am the son of Sutsa and thy disciple, O best of munis. O, tell me what is thy pleasure and what I am to do." Vasistha replied, saying, my desire hath already been accomplished. Return now to thy kingdom and rule thy subjects. And O chief of men, never insult Brahmanas any more. The monarch replied, O illustrious one, I shall never more insult superior Brahmanas. In obedience to thy command I shall always worship Brahmanas. But O best of Brahmanas, I desire to obtain from thee that by which, O foremost of all that are conversant with the Vedas, I may be freed from the debt I owe to the race of Ikshaku. O best of men, it behoveth thee to grant me, for the perpetuation of Ikshaku's race, a desirable son possessing beauty and accomplishments and good behavior. The Gandharv continued, thus addressed, Vasistha, that best of Brahmanas devoted to truth replied unto that mighty bowman of a monarch, saying, I will give you after some time, O prince of men. Vasistha, accompanied by the monarch, went to the latter's capital known all over the earth by the name of Ayodhya. The citizens in great joy came out to receive the sinless and illustrious one, like the dwellers in heaven coming out to receive their chief. The monarch, accompanied by Vasistha, re-entered his auspicious capital after a long time. The citizens of Ayodhya beheld their king accompanied by his priest, as if he were the rising sun. The monarch, who was superior to everyone in beauty, filled by his splendor the whole town of Ayodhya, like the autumnal moon filling by his splendor the whole firmament. It was then that at the 12th year of the conception was born Asmeka, that bull amongst men, that royal sage who founded the city of Poidania. It was then that at the 12th year of the conception was born Asmeka, that bull amongst men, that royal sage who founded the city of Poidania. Thus ends the 179th section in the Chaitraratha Parva of the Adiparva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adiparva. Section 180, Chaitraratha Parva continued. The Gandharv continued, then O Parth, Adrasyanti, who had been residing in Vasistha's asylum, brought forth, when the time came, a son who was the perpetuator of Sakri's race and who was a second Sakri in everything. O foremost of Bharata, that best of Munis, the illustrious Vasistha himself performed the usual afterbirth ceremonies of his grandson. And, because the Risem Vasistha had resolved on self-destruction but had abstained therefrom as soon as he knew of the existence of that child, when born, was called Parasra, the vivifier of the dead. The virtuous Parasra, from the day of his birth, knew Vasistha for his father and behaved towards the Muni as such. One day, O son of Kunti, the child addressed Vasistha, that first of Brahmana sages, as father, in the presence of his mother Adrasyanti. Adrasyanti, hearing the very intelligible sound father sweetly uttered by her son, addressed him with tearful eyes and said, O child, do not address this thy grandfather as father. Thy father, O son, has been devoured by a Rakshasa in a different forest. O innocent one, he is not thy father whom thou regardest so. The reverend one is the father of that celebrated father of thine. Thus addressed by his mother, that best of Risem of truthful speech, gave away to sorrow, but soon fired up and resolved to destroy the whole creation. Then that illustrious and great ascetic Vasistha, that foremost of all persons conversant with Brahma, that son of Mitravruna, that rishi acquainted with positive truth, addressed his grandson who had set his heart upon the destruction of the world. Here, O Arjuna, the arguments by which Vasistha succeeded in driving out that resolution from his grandson's mind. The Gandharv continued, Then Vasistha said, there was a celebrated king of the name of Kritavirya. That bull among the kings of the earth was the disciple of the Veda-knowing Bhrigus. That king, O child, after performing the Soma sacrifice, gratified the Brahmanas with great presents of rice and wealth. After that monarch had ascended to heaven, an occasion came when his descendants were in want of wealth. And knowing that the Bhrigus were rich, those princes went unto those best of Brahmanas, in the guise of beggars. Some amongst the Bhrigus, to protect their wealth, buried it under earth, and some from fear of the Kshatriyas, began to give away their wealth unto other Brahmanas, while some amongst them duly gave unto the Kshatriyas whatever they wanted. It happened, however, that some Kshatriyas, in digging as they pleased at the house of particular Bhargava, came upon a large treasure, and the treasure was seen by all those bulls among Kshatriyas who had been there. Enraged at what they regarded as the deceitful behavior of the Bhrigus, the Kshatriyas insulted the Brahmanas, though the latter asked for mercy. And those mighty bowmen began to slaughter the Bhrigus with their sharp arrows. And the Kshatriyas wandered over the earth, slaughtering even the embryos that were in the wombs of the women of the Bhrigu race. And while the Bhrigu race was thus being exterminated, the women of that tribe fled from fear to the inaccessible mountains of Himamvata. And one amongst these women, of tapering thighs, desiring to perpetuate her husbandi race, held in one of her thighs an embryo endued with great energy. A certain Brahmana woman, however, who came to know this fact, went from fear unto the Kshatriyas and reported unto them. And the Kshatriyas then went to destroy that embryo. Arrived at the place, they beheld the would-be mother blazing with inborn energy, and the child that in her thigh came out tearing up the thigh and dazzling the eyes of those Kshatriyas like the midday sun. Thus deprived of their eyes, the Kshatriyas began to wander over those inaccessible mountains. And distressed at the loss of sight, the princes were afflicted with woe, and desirous of regaining the use of their eyes they resolved to seek the protection of that faultless woman. Then those Kshatriyas, afflicted with sorrow, and from loss of sight like unto a fire that hath gone out, addressed with anxious hearts that illustrious lady, saying, by thy grace, O lady, we wish to be restored to sight. We shall then return to our homes all together and abstain forever from our sinful practice. O handsome one, it behoveth thee with thy child to show us mercy. It behoveth thee to favor these kings by granting them their eyesights. Thus ends the 180th section in the Chakraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.